It's been a long time. Do we remember what we were studying before the long weekend, the 5-day weekend? Well, just a quick reminder, we were studying protists. So we had already defined protists as any eukaryote that is not a plant, a fungus, or an animal. So we've been talking about the way they are characterized. We have animal-like protists. Animal-like protists are like animals in that they can move. And they are also like animals that they are heterotrophs. Very important. They're heterotrophic consumers. And so we actually classify them based on how they move. So they could move with flagella. Flagella, remember, are the long whip-like projections that allow them to swim. The pseudopodia, with pseudopodia, what does the term pseudopodia mean? Fake feet. And we'll come back, actually we'll see a little bit more about the pseudopodia later on indirectly. And then with cilia, which are small hair-like projections of the cell, and some have no known movement. Then we talked about the plant-like protists. Plant-like protists are like plants in that they are autotrophs. They are photosynthesizers for the most part. But they are not considered plants because they do not have true stems, roots, or leaves. Then today, we get to talk about fungus-like protists. Fungus-like protists are heterotrophic decomposers. And this is how they are similar to fungi, to true fungi. But the reason why they're not classified as true fungi is because they can move at some part of their life cycle. So today, let's just take a look at some examples. Plasmodial slime molds. Plasmodial slime molds spend most of their life as a plasmodium. And a plasmodium is a large single cell with several nuclei. So these large single cells move like a giant amoeba. And they usually reproduce asexually. So let's take a look at one of these. Aw, isn't that pretty? So all of this yellow is a single cell. And then you can see there's like oatmeal here that it's living next to, so that gives you an idea of how big the cell is. Okay. So this would be a plasmodium. When the conditions are poor, so there's not enough food or not enough water, they stop growing and they reproduce sexually. Now think back when we've talked about sexual reproduction before, one of the benefits of sexual reproduction is that it increases the diversity. So if the conditions are poor, these guys will reproduce sexually to produce a more diverse population that might be able to survive better under these poor conditions. At least that's the rationale. Okay. Next up are cellular slime molds. Cellular slime molds form amoeba-like cells, and they're single-celled, but when the conditions, once again, we're talking poor conditions, if there's a lack of food, a lack of water, these cells swarm together to produce a pseudoplasmodium. Okay, so pseudo, once again, we've got a fake plasmodium. So these cells do not fuse to one another. They're more like colonizing, but they move as one now. And if you take a look at cellular slime molds at their colonies, they look kind of like a slug. My example here is just of a single one. Somewhere, there we go. Okay, so just a single one. But they are amoeba-like cells. And last are water molds and downy mildews. Now, like other fungus-like protists, they are decomposers. They form branching strands of cells. Both of these do. They're closely related, but they are distinguishable from one another. Water molds are parasites in, you guessed it, water. So one last picture for us here. This is a little bit of overkill, this poor fish. But all these fuzzies you see on him, those are strands of cells of water molds. Now, if you have an aquarium, you might have seen these before. Usually, like I said, he's overkill. But right here is a little opening called the cloaca. We'll talk more about that later on when we talk about fish. But that's the common opening for their digestion and for their reproductive system. Okay. And so a lot of times you'll see if you've got a little goldfish, you might find that there's a string hanging from his cloaca, a white string, and that white string is a water mold. So if your fishy gets that little white string hanging from him, he's a goner. Other times you might see him coming through the gills because, like fungi, these fungus-like protists like warm, moist areas. Well, in the gills there's plenty of blood supply, so that's going to be a warmer area. And then this common opening for the digestive system, same deal. And downy mildews are plant parasites. And the biggest, most widely known of these downy mildews is the one that caused the potato blight in Ireland in the 1800s. Okay. A blight is just the term for any plant disease. Okay. So the potato blight wiped out the potatoes. A million people died because they didn't have enough to eat. 7 years of famine. Ugly story. And all because of these downy mildews. And with that, we're done. So next up is the quest, and the quest is on Friday. It is only worth 40 points. In addition, after this, we're going to watch a crash course. I've put the link for the crash course up on dashboard for you. Now, trying to figure out, that's not what I wanted. Forgive me while I try to figure out how to turn off the recording. Probably should have done this before. So you can turn me off now. It's okay.